Hello, my name is J.R. Rodriguez. Rob Ager produced this video to bring attention to an object in the River of Blood. When I saw this video, I had never noticed that there was an object that came out with the River of Blood. But since I've seen this video and I made a lot of discoveries, I've come to the conclusion that what is coming out of the elevator is John Lennon's body. This is a reference to John Lennon getting assassinated at his hotel or slash apartment place, and I am going to use sort of a glass onion technique to answer the question.
Definitive interpretation of this detail at the time. And I still don't have a definitive interpretation, but it's worth doing an update.
I re-edited his video to just stick to the subject of the body or the object in the River of Blood. I will leave a link to the video if you want to see the whole video. I will leave a link in the description. Like I said, I love this guy. He points out things, don't always have an answer, but he points out very interesting things, and he leaves it or encourages the viewers to give an answer. I love it. Let's hear him make his case.
Okay, so I'm just looking at the footage now. You see a flow, and right there, just before the blood splashes up from the sides of the image to block out the view, we get this. It looks like a skull or I don't know, maybe a dead body or some other object maybe that falls out of the elevator with the blood. Okay, so, and then all the blood splashes over and obscures it, and it's gone. And we see this river of blood many times. This object in the river of blood literally shines. What the hell is that? The Jack Torrance character, he goes near an elevator. I think he's not long come out of room 237 or something like that. I can't remember. There's something he experiences which terrifies him, and he thinks about using the elevator. And he looks at the elevator and he says, actually, you know what, I'm going to dig out the novel now. I've got the novel in the other room, I've got it, I've got this note in there, in the novel. I'll dig it out and I'll read it out. But anyway, page 280, Jack Nicholson, he's just been through something that's happened in the hotel, and he considers taking the elevator. So let me just read it. I didn't see that at all, Jack Torrance said quite clearly. His face was white and haggard, and his mouth kept trying to grin. But he didn't take the elevator back down. It was too much like an open mouth, too much by half.
Bring me back to December 8th.
Now, the novel is not a reliable source.
It was a very long day.
Film. Talked about this many times.
So I'm sitting there.
The only one who's talked about it.
It's dark.
The movie is so different.
And this limo pulls up.
So many vast changes.
And John got out.
The novel is no longer a reliable way of interpreting the film. However,
and he looked at
the
me.
notion of an elevator.
I heard this voice. Not an audible voice, but an inaudible voice saying over and over, do it, do it, do it, do it.
He's probably read that line, and he said to himself, well, you know what?
I guess that was
do
me
something with
inside.
that. I can use that
And I
symbolically in
pulled
the film, and I think he's actually done that.
revolver out of my pocket. I went into what's called a combat stance,
probably got that idea from the book there.
Fired at his back.
Some other supporting information about this is that I've been to the Stanley Kubrick archives in London.
Why did you kill John?
I looked at the
I thought by killing him,
design sketches.
I would acquire his fame.
A very well-known artist of the time called Saul Bass. I've got a book of his work here. He's really good artist.
Four cops pulled John Lennon out and put him into the back of a police car, and his mouth, he was bleeding from his mouth, and it was a terrible sight.
We had a long back and forth chat. I looked at some of the letters that had gone back and forth between them that were there in the archives.
On the morning of December 8th, 1980, John Lennon did a photo shoot for Rolling Stone magazine with his wife, Yoko Ono.
Again and again and again in the
later that afternoon, they departed their building where they were greeted by a fan who wanted their autograph. Lennon signed the copy of his most recent album, Double Fantasy. Then, John Lennon and his wife came here to the record plant to record Yoko Ono's single, Walking on Thin Ice.
Which are specifically rendered as faces in these alternative posters.
They spent most of the day
so you'll
and
see
evening
like the
here.
Overlook Hotel from
Just
outside,
after 10 p.m. they got into a car and returned home.
It will be all dark.
It would be the final
but there will
time
be some
John
lit
Lennon would ever step
windows
foot
and
inside a record
doorways,
studio.
The form
They stepped out of the limousine and they went inside the gate there, and then all of a sudden they heard 5, 6 shots, and that was it.
Showing hallways
When they returned back home
inside
later that night,
hotel,
the same fan
with
that asked John Lennon for an
doorways,
autograph
like,
pulled out a gun and shot him in cold blood in the
like
vestibule
very
of his building.
blatantly.
Mr. Chapman came up
and
behind
there are
him and
various
called
shots
to him,
of
Mr. Lennon,
large
as he arrived at that
mouths
doorway.
with
And then
human
in a
figures inside
combat
the
stance,
mouths.
he
What I
fired,
call,
he emptied the
which
Charter
is one of the
Arms
reasons
38
why I
caliber
suspect
gun that he
the
had with
object
him,
that falls out in the
and,
river of blood here may have been
shot
intended
John
by
Lennon.
Kubrick to be a dead body falling out the elevator. Okay,
Police
so
responded to the scene right
there's
away.
lots of that
When
in
they
the
saw the
Kubrick
amount of blood
archives,
coming from Lennon's
and
body,
if you
they
actually
knew
go
they
look
could
at
not
the
wait for an
movie,
ambulance. They took him and put him in the
and
back
pay
of a
close
cop car and went
attention to
directly
the
to the
sets.
hospital. They
One of
also
the things
arrested the
that
shooter, Mark
occurs in a
David
few
Chapman, on the
scenes
scene.
is where you get these specific doorways.
Well, it was
double
about
doorways
10:30 in the
with
evening,
windows
and we were
that kinda
parked,
look
my partner
like
and I
schools.
were parked at the corner
I'll
of
show you a couple
72nd Street
examples
and
here.
Amsterdam
Look
Avenue,
at those.
and we heard
that one's flash-coloured.
a call come over the air
And
of
you got this
possible
one
shots
here
fired
with the shining eyes,
near
like
the
a shining
Dakota.
guy's
We
skull.
saw a few
And
people
shining
standing
guys is
around,
a very,
everybody kind of frozen. My
prominent
partner got
feature
out,
in
he
the
ran to
poster
one side,
design
and I
sketches
came around
in
from
the
the other
Kubrick
side,
archives
and
as well.
some fellow was coming to me at
So
the same time.
faces built into
And
the
he said to
architecture
me,
of the hotel
officer, be
subliminally
careful, somebody's
is
shooting
there
a gun in
the,
there. They're
the
firing
Kubrick
off
archives
shots.
sketches.
And
it
that's when I
appears to me
realized
it's
that we
there in
had
the
the
movie.
real thing happening.
So
we didn't
if this
see
elevator
we didn't see Lennon at
shot,
that time.
if that's intended to
And
be
I said to
symbolic
Jose, the
face,
doorman who I knew,
then
I said,
obviously
Jose,
there's
what's
some
going on
meaning
here?
going on there.
And he
Why would you
pointed in
have
the
that?
direction
You don't
of
just
this
throw that
fellow
in for
with the
nothing.
overcoat on. And he
You could
said,
just say,
he
oh,
just
it's
shot
there to
Lennon.
keep people out.
So I said to my partner Steve, I said, Steve,
But
stay with
what
this
I
guy,
suspect
put him up against,
is that
put him up against the wall. I went
the
inside
object
and I
that
saw
falls out
Lennon
of the
lying
door
face
is
down on
intended
the
to be a
rug.
dead body,
And he was bleeding profusely.
and it's
Hollered
the
out to
body
Steve,
of
Steve, we got a real shooting here.
Danny's
cuff
imaginary
that
friend
guy.
Tony.
He actually
we never get to see his friend Tony.
was
in
fairly
the film.
polite.
He gets talked
I
about
turned to him and I
at
said,
various
you
points.
just threw your whole damn life
And
away.
he's described
Chapman
as being
started
like
talking about a
figure.
little
Danny
person
uses his
inside of
finger
him
to talk,
and a big person inside
for
of
the
him.
voice of Tony.
The big person has
And
been winning the
he
battle up to
describes
now,
Tony
but tonight
like
the little
this.
person won the battle.
John
Thomas
Lennon was
is
brought to
imaginary
Roosevelt
friend
Hospital,
because
which is
he
Mount
hides.
Sinai Hospital today.
Where does he
Hospital
go?
staff at the time were notified
My
that they had a
stomach.
gunshot victim that needed immediate attention.
So if the
According
elevator
to doctors,
screaming
John Lennon was
face
shot 4 times in the
represents
chest,
Danny's
with
screaming
3 of the
face,
bullets
which
exiting his back.
Seems to be
The first
there
thing
in
I
the way the film
remember that was a
edited.
little out of the ordinary is
Then,
they paged me
If
overhead
that's
to
a
the
dead
ER.
body falling out the elevator,
They
wouldn't
usually
it
don't
be
do. Usually they would
his
call your
imaginary
beeper, you
friend,
respond,
Tony,
answer the beeper, they give
who
you the name
lives
or
in
message
his
or
mouth,
whatever. The
coming
other thing that
out
was
in the
unusual, he
open,
did not show up by ambulance.
opening
he showed
the
up by
door and
police
letting all
car.
the blood out.
He was in the back of a cop
I'm not
car.
totally convinced on
He
this,
gets
by the way.
put on the stretcher,
I'm
wheeled
just,
down the hall. He's wearing
there's a lot
a
of
brown
things
leather
that
jacket
connect
with a little
quite well
fur
with
collar.
that, and I'm
He had
not
blue
sure,
jeans
it could be
on,
something
track
else.
shoes, and a
So that's just an
red T-shirt
interpretation,
with Oriental print
a
on.
half-baked
Opened his
interpretation
chest,
to run by
and
you
started
guys, and I
giving
did
an
talk
internal
about that
cardiac massage.
interpretation years ago. So again, I'm interested
heart
in
itself
what you
was
guys
intact.
think of that. Is that something that you find?
And
Is that something you
the
can
vessels
expand
above the
on?
heart
Is that something that
were-
you can discredit? Do you have
what
a
were
better
injured, and we worked on him.
interpretation
We
of
didn't know
this?
who he was. We
I
just
don't
worked
know.
on him.
I'm interested
And you get
to
into a
see you
rhythm.
guys'
You
thoughts.
start.
But one thing
pumping
I
the
also
heart,
am very convinced of
people
in the
doing their
original
thing,
film, and I talked about
and
this
someone starts
in
going
a lot
through
of
these
detail,
belongings.
and
And
video
at that point,
about
someone says, his driver's
the
license, and I remember
symbolism
seeing a
of
gold American
twins
Express card that
sharing.
said John Lennon.
Is that the
and then
twins
before
sort
that,
of
someone said, "Hey, that looks like
represent,
John Lennon," and I said,
Danny
"No, that's
himself
not John Lennon."
as a
It's
kind
like
of
Doubting
split
Thomas.
personality.
It couldn't
The
possibly be
twins
John
tend to be
Lennon.
shown
And then they
in
brought out
mirrored
his stuff, his
compositions,
ID. It is John
and,
Lennon.
it's like they
That's
have
when
a
I had my
split
OMG moment.
personality.
After 30
And Danny
minutes of trying to
himself,
save his
with
life,
his imaginary
doctors
friend,
pronounced
is a
John Lennon dead.
split
By that time, the
you
ER
could
director,
say.
Dr. Lynn, had been
And
called once they found out who
You
it
could
was.
say we all have a split
Lennon
personality in that respect.
was brought
And I
to
think
the
that's there in The
emergency room
Shining. Danny's
at the
definitely got it with his
Roosevelt site, St.
imaginary
Luke's
friend.
Roosevelt Hospital this
And
evening,
I think the twins
shortly
represent
before
that.
11 p.m.
So anyway, this has been a bit of a muddled presentation here because I haven't got this stuff all worked out. I am very convinced that there is an object in that river of blood. I don't know what it is, and I don't know what it symbolises, but I've got various ideas which I've presented to you. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have got to say about this. Do you see an object in the river of blood? Do you think it's just reflections? If there's an object, What do you think it is? Why do you think it's there? Let me know, folks.
The first thing that I want to explain about the Shining movie is that it is a Beatles movie. It is a movie infused with all kind of references and hidden messages about Beatles and anything related to the Beatles, and connections like the assassination of Lennon is predicted in this movie. So I'm going to just do that, go along the movie and point out all the different discoveries that I've made about this movie and its reference to the Beatles. So here you have the first Beatles reference in the movie is the long and winding road. It's a Volkswagen Beetle. It's also a different color than what it is in the book. In the book it's red, and in the movie it's yellow. Well, if you can imagine the yellow submarine, it looks like a little yellow submarine just going along the ocean bottom like in the music video. The music video syncs up in a mirror form version of the movie like you're seeing here, and it syncs up actually in different points in the movie. Stephen King said that the title of the book was inspired by a lyric from John Lennon's song Instant Karma, We All Shine On. The character of Jack is a madman. He represents the Beatlemania. He represents Lennon's father, Alfred Lennon. He represents Mark David Chapman. He represents J.D. Salinger. And he represents Stephen King. The character of Jack is mirroring both when the Beatles first showed up to Abbey Road studio. The scene is also referencing when Chapman first visited the Dakota Hotel a month before he returned on his second trip and actually murdered Lennon. He made sure to get to know everyone. Stuart Allman is a reference to George Martin. This scene here is making reference to when John Lennon first met George Martin. George Martin was not impressed with their demo tape. It wasn't until he met them in person that he fell in love with them. Maybe that's what Kubrick is referencing here with this full-on hard-on. Susie, the secretary here, is referencing Joanne Peterson, who was Epstein's personal secretary. The coffee is in reference to their introduction to LSD. It was spiked in their coffee. The character Bill Watson is representing Brian Epstein. He became their manager and is responsible for discovering them and turning them into global superstars. Wendy is reading Catcher in the Rye. That book is important because the assassin of John Lennon claimed that he was inspired by the book to commit the act of assassinating John Lennon. The character of Danny represents John Lennon as a child or pre-Yoko Ono. He also represents his John Lennon's son, Julian and Sean Lennon. The character of Wendy, she is referencing Lennon's first wife, Cynthia Lennon, Lennon's mom, who was Julia Lennon, Mark Chapman's wife, who is Gloria Abe. It's also referencing Maureen Starkey, Ringo's wife. So a mirror is a flipped reflection. So just like in this scene, it is mirroring something that happened, but it's flipped. Bill Watson is representing Epstein. Allman is representing George Martin. And Jack is representing the Beatles. It was Epstein who introduced the Beatles to George Martin. The interview being played over this scene is actually John Lennon's last televised interview. Notice the similarity in the tie in the chair.
Thought to be quite a change for you.
I always thought there was something weird about the way that Allman's fingers and the way he would hold his hand. I see he's mirroring George Martin. He has the wonky fingers.
Our season here.
Killing his family with an axe is a reference to Lennon being the first to say to the group that he wanted a divorce out of the band. Putting both barrels of a shotgun in your mouth is referring to snorting heroin. Cabin Fever is referring to the Let It Be project, where Lennon describes the experience as going through hell. The Let It Be project ended with a rooftop concert. This would be the last time the Beatles performed live. Lennon concluded by saying, "I'd like to say thanks on behalf of the group and ourselves, and I hope we pass the audition."